Welcome back to another video. Before we begin, this is Ni no Kuni 2 Revenant Kingdom, and it dropped into Game Pass. You can play it right now. You can play it on your PlayStation. The point is, you can play this game anywhere, and I suggest doing it because it is a great example of a JRPG that is just so engrossing, so unique. The combat system, in my opinion, is how every Japanese-styled role-playing game should be. It's action-oriented, but there's some depth to it. There's a lot of creativity here. Level 5 doesn't miss when it comes to creating unique and inspiring worlds and characters, fantasy-esque. This is what this game is all about, so please check it out. We're going to talk about Redfall in this video. Redfall has now had some previews, some hands-on from multiple different sites. Some sites are saying it's really good, and some sites are saying it's just okay, and there's a few that are saying it doesn't feel polished and it just feels very generic. So where are we with all of this Redfall news? I'm going to go with this article from VideoGameChronicles.com because it addresses the one singular fear that I had going into this game. And the title of the article is "Fear Not, Arcane Fans, Redfall is an utterly engrossing single-player experience." When Redfall was first unveiled, it seemed as though the internet responded with a collective shrug. As the new creation from the immersive sim maestros Arcane, expectations were understandably high, yet to many players, disappointment. It looked like the Dishonored creator had abandoned its RPG roots for Left 4 Dead-esque co-op shenanigans. It turns out, though, Arcane devotees needn't have worried after spending 2 hours exploring the gloomy streets of a vampire-infested Massachusetts. I'm happy to say that Redfall is an utterly engrossing and atmospheric shooter. My biggest concern was in this age of Game Pass subscription services keeping people subscribed, the idea of single player just wouldn't cut it. You needed co-op, you needed games as a service, you needed collectathons, and I wasn't sure that this game was going to give me that proper single-player experience, even though they said you can kind of play it solo, but it's meant for co-op. That's something that I didn't want, and it turns out, according to this article, that they addressed that. Quote, "As I chucked into my solo slice of Redfall, I was pleasantly surprised with just how competently it blends guns and ghouls, holds up as a single-player experience. It helps, of course, that the minute-to-minute gunplay is phenomenal. While Arcane's no stranger to firearms, it's never been an area where the developer has really excelled. From Prey to last year's Deathloop, the studio's approach to guns has always felt a bit like an afterthought, a perfunctory RPG tool rather than a genuinely tactile feeling mechanic. There are no such complaints to be levied at Redfall. Here, the simple act of shooting is endlessly satisfying. Pistol rounds pop with the pleasing thud, shotgun blasts ring out like a death knell. The core combat just feels good." Something else that rings true for me is the game director Harvey Smith explained to everyone previewing the game that the influence for the Undead Annihilator was Far Cry 2, citing the 2008 first-person shooter blend of tense open-world exploration and systems-driven gameplay as a key reference point. Quote, "It's an influence that immediately rings true with my eerie exploration of this deeply cursed Massachusetts town, feeling more akin to a chewy single-player offering than a looter-shooter." That sentence right there is what gets me absolutely excited. As you roam the dimly lit streets in a perpetual twilight, the map is yours to approach as you see fit. Fancy following the main questline and uncovering the mysteries behind the outbreak? Go for it. Feel like crossing the river instead and heading down to the derelict docks to grab gear? Knock yourself out. As you wander through a lavishly rendered abandoned Art Deco movie theater, hints of Arcane's past work shine through. Each individual house you break into is intricately rendered, littered with the kind of authentic human touches that offer the kind of environmental storytelling that you'd expect from a traditional single-player Arcane outing. This is exactly what I was worried about, and this article dissuades much of my fear when it comes to this game. Now, there are some incredibly negative takes, and there are some incredibly positive takes like this one, and there are some in the middle, and when you start to see things like that come out for a game, it usually bodes well for the experience, especially if they key in on the facets of the gameplay that they're talking about here in the article, and especially if you're somebody that's looking for that deep single-player experience and not so much a co-op game, even though this is designed around co-op. At the end of this article, they really drive home the fact that it's a single-player game, and that gets me excited. They say, quote, "Before I dove into my demo, Harvey Smith assured me that Redfall stands on its own 2 feet as an enjoyable solo experience." It's a claim I've heard countless times from developers espousing the single-player joys of their co-op capers, but for its first few hours at least, it's a promise that Redfall delivers. That's exactly what I was looking for, a hands-on that tests the single-player portion of the game, that tests the engagement that you get as a fan of single player, because when you design something around co-op, the single player usually always suffers, and I've heard it before, co-op, but you can play it by yourself, and it never turns out that way. So this hands-on has got me extremely excited for Redfall's solo experience. What do you think about it? Are you going with the positive takes? Are you going with some of the negative takes? Are you stuck in between like I am? This bodes well for me to get excited about Redfall coming out very soon. Let me know what you think, though, in the comment section below about Redfall. Are you excited? Do you feel like they're going to nail the single-player experience, even though it's designed as a co-op shooter? Thanks for watching the video. Think about liking and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.